And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut It Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
It's been another big weekend in fighting because we had both UFC and Bellator cards over Memorial Day, and we've got another UFC card coming up in Utica this weekend, so no shortage of topics and no shortage of crazy people, including the one and only Nick Diaz.
You know, I'm almost getting tired of saying the phrase, have you seen his mugshot yet? It's getting ridiculous, where in the span of, 2 months, 3 months, we've had two high-profile fighters that have been arrested and are facing some, in one case, and we're going to talk about later, some serious charges. Is this something we're going to be dealing with down the road, or do you think these two instances are isolated incidents?
I wouldn't say isolated. I think there is a certain factor that, I don't want to say you have to be crazy to be a fighter, because that's not quite the truth of the matter. It's more like sometimes in a sport where concussions are prevalent, you're going to have certain people who may not be right in the head after a certain point in their career.
Fair enough. And we'll mention the one with the most recent mugshot in a minute, but we do have to talk about UFC and Bellator events that happened this past weekend. And Stevie, let's start with UFC with an interesting main event that, let's just say the drama started at the weigh-ins.
Absolutely, because the main event for Wonderboy Thompson and Darren Till was almost a scratch because Darren Till was unable to make the contracted weight. Stephen Thompson didn't have that problem. Darren Till was over by at least a couple of pounds.
And it's a hometown fight for him. It's something where you want to be good, show good, be an ambassador for your sport in your hometown, and he misses weight to the point where Thompson said, if you don't make X amount of weight by a certain number of hours before the fight, this fight's over. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And he had to make 188, I think?
Yeah, 188 before the fight. He had to step on a scale before he stepped into the cage and not weigh more than 188 pounds.
Well, he did. And he gave 30% of his purse to Thompson as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as the fight goes, it went the distance, which sometimes can be good. This was not one of those cases.
No, definitely not. And the scoring has caused some consternation among the MMA community, including a lot of videos that I've seen over the last few days, pro or con, explaining whether or not they agree with Darren Till getting the decision.
So, my bone of contention is this. If, let's say, you and I fight, Stevie. You're coming to Ottawa. You're going to fight me. The judges are going to be from my province. You don't want a hometown decision. You're going to want to come out like a bat out of hell. You're going to want to take the fight away from the judges, and you're going to want to win this fight. You don't want to leave it to the judges, because if you do, you run the risk of having a hometown decision. I'm not saying it happens every time, but in Brazil, for example, we make that joke, and that's what happened. We do it in England, this show here. Some of these scorecards, I don't know what fight they were watching.
So you think he got a hometown decision? You think the judges
absolutely
were in his favor here?
Yes, and I watched the fight actually twice because I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. But I mean, I tried to figure out how it could have been scored. Maybe I was watching it through rose-colored glasses. I'm going to try, be objective, watch it a second time, and really focus. Maybe I missed something the first time. I had Thompson winning both times, and I was like, how does my math not equal, what actually happened? Apparently, Media Row, they had, I think it was 87 or 88% of them picked Thompson. On their cards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying media makes the best judges, but it's kind of a telltale sign when almost 9 out of 10 people in media row who have a very good seat cage side see the fight one way.
Well, I knew this was going to be contentious, or we wouldn't be discussing it, because that's what Glove Up or Shut Up is all about. But at the same time, I'm going to make an argument that I've made before on this show, so you probably know what it is, and our longtime listeners probably know what it is as well. In a 10-9 must-scoring system, when judges do not liberally use 10-8s or 10-7s, and rounds are close and competitive, you're going to have situations like this where it's very easy for a judge to see a 10-9 as a 9-10 because the margin of difference between the two is that slight.
Someone, I forget where I said it might have been on the post show, where they said if you have more high fives than significant strikes in a round, something's wrong here. It looked like, do you remember the Pat Barry fight where it looked like it was a sparring session?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this fight reminded me of. A sparring session live from Liverpool.
Right. I'm not saying it's a pleasing decision. I don't want you to think I'm defending the decision. I'm saying the scoring system leads to situations such as this one here.
Do you think, obviously this hurts Thompson in more ways than one.
Well,
hurts
yeah,
his ranking,
he was...
hurts his paycheck.
Yeah. The only thing he gets out of it is 30% of Till's purse. Other than that, he loses a lot. He lost the fight. He loses his standing. Till arguably shouldn't be a number one contender given that he didn't make weight. But the real winner then would be Rafael dos Anjos, because if you can't move Till up to number one and you have to drop Thompson down below Till, then dos Anjos moves up.
So, I mean, as far as Thompson's concerned, I mean, obviously he's going to drop. There's no way around that. You can't have him at that position. He's going to drop to 2, maybe 3 on some of the people on that scoring panel. But I would predict he'd probably go down 1 notch to 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down to 3. But
well, I'm just trying to tell you, as somebody who actually files these rankings on a weekly basis, my own personal list after this fight was Rafael dos Anjos number 1, Darren Till number 2, Stephen Thompson number 3.
Whoa! You put
again?
Number 2?
How did I? I thought I just went over this.
He was 8.
No,
he was 8.
Okay, you can't move Till up to 1. Because he didn't make weight even though he won the fight. So he shouldn't be a number one contender based off of that. And you just said yourself, Thompson has to drop down off of the loss. So again, you shuffle the deck here. Thompson is number 1, Dos Anjos is number 2, Darren Till is number 8. If Till is not moving up to number 1 and Stephen Thompson is going down, then Dos Anjos moves up to number 1, Thompson drops down to number 3, and Darren Till, by virtue of a win over Thompson, is number 2.
He leapfrogs over how many fighters over that performance? If he knocked out or tapped out Thompson, I could see that.
You're taking this up with the UFC matchmaker and not me, because I'm not the one who put a number 1 fighter against a number 8 fighter. That wasn't my booking.
But that performance warrants that.
No, that performance doesn't warrant him being number 1. That's exactly what I'm saying. If that
maybe
had
5.
been, no, look, if he had knocked out Wonder Boy, if he had dominated Wonder Boy, if he had submitted Wonder Boy, then you could say, look, he just beat the number 1 guy in the world who's not the champion. That makes him a clear number 1. He didn't do any of those things. He didn't knock him out. He didn't submit him. He didn't dominate him. And he missed weight. So you can't make Darren Till number 1. However, he did beat the number 1 guy who is not the champion. So that still merits an upward trajectory. That moves him up, and it has to move him above Thompson, because otherwise, what's the point? If you don't move above the guy ranked above you when you beat him, then what's the point of rankings?
Oh, man. I don't like this.
You need to take this up with Rich Chow. You need to take this up with Joe Silva. You need to take this up with people who book fights, because I'm not the booker man.
Oh, man. That is... Okay, let's look at the rankings here. I have them up here. Masvidal, this is before the fight, obviously. Masvidal 7, Maia 6, Usman 5, Lawler 4, Covington 3, and Dos Anjos 2. I could see Thompson going down to number 3, put Anjos in 2, and because Covington's fighting for an interim title fight with Dos Anjos, put him at number 2. So in my ranking, I would have RDA 1, Covington 2, Thompson 3. I could put Till maybe 4, maybe 5, but if he knocked out or tapped out Thompson, I'd put him in my top 3.
Okay, here's how I want to look at it, because you just made this point. RDA has a contendership fight coming up. So if you have him as number 1, as I do, and he wins that contender fight, which he may, that settles all of these problems. And if he loses, and we have a new number 1 contender, either way, Darren Till is not your number 1 contender. And Thompson can't be, coming off losing to Woodley and losing to Till. You can't, I'm sorry, you just can't keep Thompson up that high after 2 high-profile losses. He's got to slide down. Whatever you think of Till, he's still got to go down.
I mean, Till, I'm not saying Till doesn't deserve to be improved in his ranking, but I don't think he beats Lawler. I think him and Usman's a great fight. Him and Maia, it depends. But I would put Till in 4 or 5.
You know what? This is actually a case where you're not seeing the big picture, and I'm sorry to call you out for that in that manner, but you should look at the fact that if Darren Till moves up into the top 3, he's got a target on his back, because all those guys you just mentioned, Lawler, Usman, Masvidal, Covington, are all going to be like, screw you, dude, that's a terrible fight. I'll whip your ass. Everybody's going to be calling out Darren Till. Do yourself a favor and look at the booking possibilities for that and see that Darren Till moving up above Thompson is actually opening up a whole world of matches of people wanting to beat his ass.
This might be a typo in the rankings, and we're going to move on in a minute because we got a lot to get to. But I'm looking at the rankings. They actually have Covington and Lawler both ranked at number 3.
Yeah, that's why I didn't understand what you were talking about when you said 3 and 4, because I'm looking at the exact same page and it's tied 3 and 3, Lawler and Covington, with Lawler having moved up 1 spot.
I wonder if that's a common occurrence.
That's actually a very common occurrence. There have been multiple ties. There have been ties at light heavyweight in the pound-for-pound rankings. At heavyweight, there have been plenty of ties.
All right, well, let's move on to the co-main event, because as I said, we got a lot to get to here.
Yes,
Neil Magny beating Craig White in the first round at 4:32.
Yep, that is correct. What were your thoughts on the fight?
That knockout shot that made White forget where he was for, a few minutes.
Yeah.
The look on his face was, oh boy.
Anybody catch the name of that bus?
It's a double-decker. I think it's red.
Yeah.
Big Ben. That's who hit me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Who's your favorite band? The Beatles. He's knocked out. Don't worry about it. He's knocked out. Oh, man. I mean, I hate to bring the show down, Stevie, but I would have loved to talk to Matt Cleary about this, because in England, I would have loved to get his response on some of these fights.
Yeah, I know, especially a show in Liverpool, like you said, but just not possible, I'm afraid. May he rest in peace.
Yeah, absolutely. let's see, Arnold Allen beat Mads Burnell with a submission. This was a fight where he took the fight from the jaws of defeat into victory. Like, he had this, he was losing on the scorecards, but you never give up. And then he's up, he has his back up against the cage, and he puts on almost like a headlock, and he's trying to work something. And I'm trying to think, is he going for a choke, or is he trying to improve his position, or I'm not sure. And then he kind of just cranked in a right way, and there was a tap out. I was like, holy crap, he did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what happened here?
He put on a front choke. That's what he did.
It was done almost like if you lead with your head, you run that risk. I get that. We've seen guys get knocked out because they almost, pardon my wrestling terminology, but they'll go for a spear and the guy will time a perfect uppercut.
Right. But leading with your head is vulnerable in all forms of mixed martial arts. It's not just you can get knocked out because your forward momentum carries you into the fist. It's also that if you give the guy your neck because you're charging right at him for a takedown or trying to push him into the fence, once that neck is exposed and you can wrap an arm around it, you got a lot of options. You got a guillotine choke, you got a front choke, you can transition to the back for a rear naked choke. You can do all kinds of things once you got a hold of somebody's neck.
I thought it was going to be a neck crank for a minute.
That works too. I'm saying millions of
neck
possibilities.
Neck cranks are painful as hell.
Yeah, you don't want to be in one.
Well,
no.
No, hell no.
Yeah.
Speaking of millions of possibilities, explain this fight with Knight and Amir Khani.
The scorecards make it a little difficult to explain because we've got a 27-30 and two 29-28s, and the man who gets the split decision is Amir Khani, who gets 2-1 with 2 out of 3 judges.
No.
Yeah.
The judges got it wrong on this one. I'm sorry.
I'm not justifying it, just like the main event. I'm just telling you what happened. I'm not saying that's something I necessarily concur with.
When I heard 30-27, I'm like, oh, okay. Not all 3 rounds, but okay. Sometimes judges do that. And then 29-28 and 29-28 for you win it by split decision. I'm like, before even it was announced, I'm looking at my screen like, oh, they didn't do it. And then they did. And I'm like, yep.
Okay, well.
I'm writing my notes. I take notes sometimes when I watch fights, Stevie, you know that.
Yeah.
And I question mark, underline. It's like, what the hell? I just write it,
See,
is this reality right now?
I want to ask you about your notes because that's exactly where I was going. I want to know who you think was the better striker. Did you write that down? Did you put any notes about who was better on the feet?
So it depends on the card. Sometimes I'll have a simple tally, like significant strikes, or between rounds I'll jot down my notes, and then if it goes to the judges, I'll read my notes over during the break, and then I'll say, okay, in my notes I'm saying X fighter wins.
Okay, but that isn't what I was asking you, though.
I was more of a significant... one, when it comes to the significant strikes, I had it 29-28 for Knight.
Okay.
But
that's...
Yeah, it was close.
That's where I'm asking you the question, because there's a difference between significant strikes and total strikes. Because sometimes you land a really good punch that just totally wrecks a guy's shit, and you can still be outstruck in the round.
Yeah, because the other fighter's throwing pitter-patter punches.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Who is the more accurate striker versus who is the more significant striker? And you're telling me that in your case, you're saying significant strikes favors Jason Knight.
Yes.
Okay. That's the argument I was looking for.
I always look for significant strikes because you're causing the most damage in that round versus someone who is, if you're looking at that argument, pitter-patter punches where it's a nice strike, but to really do any damage? Not really.
Well,
it might have offset a move the guy was trying to do. But
apparently at least one judge thought that Amir Khani was the better striker, so... Or, pardon me, 2 judges thought he was the better striker. Only one thought Knight was.
Yeah. Let's talk about Silva and Talib.
Well, there's not much to talk about because our boy Nordine got choked out 4 minutes 31 seconds with a rear naked.
Once he got taken down, it wasn't long. It was a certainty almost, because the way Silva worked that fight once he got to the ground, it was like a clinic, and you knew it was going to happen.
And look at the guy's career record coming into this fight. I mean, he was already 11-1 to begin with, and 7 of his wins, or 6, pardon me, were by submission. This was his 7th. So, it's not like he didn't have a track record in this case. He's a black belt under Ricardo Vieira, so not like the guy wasn't skilled coming out of that Nova União camp. So, like you said, once he went to the ground with Nordine, it was almost a certainty.
Let's move on to Darren Stewart and Eric Spicely.
Did not go the distance. 1 minute 47 seconds. Darren Stewart gets the TKO.
Good win for him. It was not paint by numbers, but it was a great knockout win for him, and he'll take it.
Now, just to be clear, if it was going to the judges, how would you have scored the first round?
Oh, man, you're going to ask me that. If I'm judging one round alone, I might have given it to Spicely, but if it's a close round on my notes... In my notes, what I'll do, and I'm peeling back the curtain just ever so slightly, is that if it's a close round in my 3 rounds or 5 rounds when I'm writing my notes, I'll put like a question mark, or I'll circle round, or 10-9 so-and-so, but I might circle it so that way it tells me that it could have gone either way. It was a close round.
So did you circle it? Did you circle it here?
Yeah, I thought it was close.
Okay, so conceivably, Spicely could have been winning the fight before the second round.
Yeah.
All right, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, in theory, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's kind of the story of this card,
here.
because it's what you were saying with our other fight earlier, is that he was losing until he won. That's kind of the story of a lot of fights on this card.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. What is prelims here? I like the Landsberg win decision.
Yeah,
Good
that
for
was
her.
a bit of an upset. Quality win.
Really?
Yeah, well, Landsberg was very low in the rankings before this fight.
She needed this win, though. I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, no, but it went to a decision, which, okay, she did well, but a knockout would have really helped her case a whole lot more.
True. That is true. Just like Tom Breeze and Daniel Kelly.
Oh yeah. No, that one wasn't surprising at all, because we actually heard that from Michael Venom Page in the main event, and I know we haven't gotten there yet, but he said, I train with some of the best guys at London Shoot, including my man Tom Breeze. So what did Tom Breeze go out and do? He got a TKO. Why am I not surprised?
Not surprised. Other fights in the prelims, well, there was only one on the Fight Pass, and that was Elias Teradou beating Trevor Smith with a decision.
Mm-hmm. And on the FS1 card, we had Jillian Robertson, rear naked choke over Molly McCann, and Carlo Pedroso Jr. beat Brad Scott with a split decision.
So that wraps up the main card. Now, this happened on, was it the weigh-ins? No, this was the Sunday card. I'm already thinking ahead. Let's talk about the Bellator show, because this happened on Friday, and this was, it had a lot of news happening, not related to Bellator, but it was running head to head. So if you were following certain fights on Twitter like I was, because you were at an event, your MMA feed was polluted with A and B at the same time, trying to compete for your attention.
Fair enough, but for me, there was only one A, because A is what I get paid to do. So for me, there's no question.
All right, let's talk about Bellator 200 from London with the main event of Mirko Cro Cop, and we didn't get that. We got Roy Nelson. No, we didn't get him either.
No, we got Gegard Mousasi and Rafael Cavallo. Cavallo, having defended the title numerous times since he won it in a fight for the vacant middleweight title, he beat Brandon Halsey with a liver kick, and he had run through everybody since then. And I say that in the politest way possible because the names he ran through were Melvin Manouf twice and Alessio Sakara. Manouf is a little up there in age, and Sakara was kind of a gimme fight because they wanted the hometown guy to fight in Florence, Italy. So he hadn't faced the best contenders in the world, but at the same time, Cavallo had not lost a fight since his pro debut back in 2011. So not taking the guy seriously would be a mistake. And Gegard Mousasi definitely took him seriously. He came out there looking for a fight and not looking for it to go the distance and just overwhelmed Rafael Cavallo with his striking.
I'll be honest, when this fight happened, when Mousasi won, as I said, I was actually at a wrestling show that night. And during a quiet part of the action, I go checking my phone, and I just blurred out, "Holy shit." And it was a dead spot in the match, and I had, like, my whole section looking, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, it's MMA. Don't watch the match, damn it. Watch the match. And I'm trying to see what happened, trying to get highlights. But Mousasi, when I was told that, when I was told that Mousasi won the fight and it was via TKO in the first round, I had to double check to make sure I wasn't seeing things. Because we talked about this fight last week. I didn't think a first round TKO by Mousasi was going to happen. Did you?
I didn't see that it was 100% a certainty, but I will say, when you get a guy like Gegard Mousasi who takes you down, gets mount, and starts to pound on you, if you're not defending every single one of his strikes and getting back to your feet immediately, you're in deep shit. And Rafael Cavallo, with Gegard Mousasi sitting on top of him, raining down punches, was not gonna last. I mean, I don't know if that was, his game plan was, I'll let Mousasi tire himself out and then I'll get back to my feet. But Mousasi, as I've said many, many times on this podcast, is one of the best strikers in the game. And if you give him the chance to get on top of you and pound away at you, you're done for.
Now, I hate saying this but you understand why I'm saying it in a minute. Do you think Cavallo was overconfident fighting a guy like Mousasi this late in Mousasi's career?
I don't feel that he was overconfident because I talked to him on the conference call and he said, I've been a dominant champion. I've trained great for this fight. I'm ready. He's a great opponent. He's a worthy opponent, but I've faced many opponents that were worthy of my time, and he's just another one. And I don't think he was coming in like, I'm going to whip that ass, but he knew it was going to be a tough fight, and he was ready for it.
Do you think he learns from this?
I think he comes back from it. I don't know if he can beat Mousasi in a rematch, but I could see him earning his way to a rematch.
Now, I always ask you this question, but who do you put in front of him next to, reclaim his spot?
Who do you put in front of Cavallo next?
Yes.
Oh, geez. Obviously not Manouf or Sakara.
No. Dear God. No.
I'd have to think about that one.
There's some quality fights there, but
you're gonna have to give me a minute
because that weight class. But
I thought we were gonna go on to the next fight. I didn't think you were gonna actually ask me who's the next contender because, I didn't even think about who Mousasi was fighting next, let alone who Cavallo was fighting next.
Well, Mousasi, he's the champ. He can not sit and enjoy the moment, but he's in a better position than Cavallo because, I mean,
Okay, you want an answer?
I don't think it's a rematch type situation.
I've got an answer for you. I've got a couple of answers for you.
Okay.
There's Alexander Shlemenko, who some people believe beat Mousasi in his fight when Mousasi debuted in Bellator. So you could do a contenders fight between Cavallo and Shlemenko, and if Shlemenko wins, he gets a title shot. Or if Cavallo wins, he gets the rematch. Also,
okay, who else you got?
Also, you've got Chidi Bang Bang Njokuani, who is right there in the list of guys that have been impressive in the division. He just came off a unanimous decision win over an exciting striker in Asaki Kato. The blemish on his loss to Koreshkov means that probably he's not getting anywhere anytime soon, but at the same time, he could be in the mix in like a rankings fight. And other than that, I would say you're looking at either John Salter or Rafael Lovato Jr.
I go with Njokuani.
I figured you might.
Yeah. All right, that's the fight that I would make. Cavallo, hell, you could probably, if they wanted to rush Mousasi, they could give him Shlemenko, but I don't know. That's, depending on how, I don't think he suffered any injuries. I don't think he has any medical suspensions, so, unless he broke his hand punching down, but.
Yeah, maybe, but I didn't hear it.
We've seen that before.
Oh yeah, we have.
Speaking of what we've seen before, you always like a verbal submission to end a fight. Michael Page did that in the second round at the 43-second mark.
Yeah, and honestly, my thinking was when I saw the blood leaking from the face of David Rickles, I was thinking, that's probably a fractured orbital bone. He's verbally submitting because he knows that his eye is completely jacked up and he can't continue.
After that first round, what do you tell Rickles?
You tell him, you're in a hole, buddy. You need to go out there and change your game plan because you were just letting the guy outwork you, outmaneuver you, outstrike you, and out everything. You've got to go out there and just either dump it all into a bum rush and try to get him to the ground, or you got to just go in there and wing punches and pray.
And don't let him hit you in the face, whatever you do.
No. Page is, like I've already said, he talks about London shoot fighters are being the best strikers on the planet and they'll go toe-to-toe with anybody. You look at what Tom Breeze did, you look at what Michael Page did, it's not hard to believe him.
I don't think his punching power is underrated, that's for sure.
No. The one thing that people have knocked Page for and continue to knock him for, even if this fight was as dominant as it was, is that he's undefeated, but he hasn't faced the best guys. Everybody's saying, well, Michael Page is good, but when's he going to fight a championship fight? When's he going to fight a number one contender? When's he going to go out there and have that fight that really solidifies him as the man? Is he ready for Rory McDonald? I don't know. Is he ready for Douglas Lima? He might be.
But if you want to put yourself into a championship caliber fight, or a fight with championship implications, what do? You make your opponent verbally submit.
That's true. He's doing the right things. The thing that people knock him for is that he's not doing it to the right people.
Well, Rickles, that was a big name.
It's a big name for Bellator, given that he's been around there forever. But this is also a guy that was moving up from lightweight to welterweight for some of his fights. He's better known for his power and dominance as a lightweight, but he's also never beaten the top guys at lightweight either. So he's kind of in a catch-22 where he's a really exciting fighter. He's a fan favorite. He's really popular, but he's only a big name in Bellator, and he's never beaten the top guys, and he sure didn't beat Page.
No. Page, it was impressive. I'm not gonna lie. I want him to have that I want his next fight to be that next step.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm
But,
saying it's
man,
like it's time for somebody like Douglas Lima. He needs to be up there with somebody of that caliber, or give him a submission expert like Neiman Gracie and see if he can go out there and prevent the takedown and prevent getting submitted. You know, make him go out there and prove it. You know, he's an exciting striker. He's fun to watch, but is he ready for a world title fight with the likes of Rory McDonald? If he can beat a Lima or a Gracie, then he is.
well, let's move on to the other fights here. Ash Griffiths didn't last long against Aaron Chalmers. Standing guillotine at 1:54.
This is exactly what we were talking about. You give a guy your neck and bad things can happen, and that's exactly what Ash Griffiths did. He gave Aaron Chalmers the chance to wrap an arm around his neck, and it was a standing guillotine. I'm just gonna stand up and I'm gonna lean back and I'm gonna crank on your head as hard as I can, leaning backwards, and I'm not even going to the ground with it. And he got him good. He got him to the point where he blinked in and out of consciousness. He went out, he woke back up, and then he tapped, and then he went out again.
Well, we want to talk about bad things happening? Tell that to Carl Noon.
Ooh, yeah. Seabass Shipman. Now you know why this guy is considered an up-and-coming prospect, because not that both of these guys didn't have a little bit of a disparity in the matchup, because Chalmers was fighting a guy who was 4-6, so Chalmers had, you know, more power and more technique and everything, but Griffiths had more experience, so maybe not as much of a disparity here, but in this particular one, Shipman and Noon hadn't fought in, I think, 6, maybe 7 years, so it was like, okay, how's he going to do in this fight against a guy who's a knockout artist who's on a 10-fight winning streak? We got our answer. Shipman went in there and took care of business and didn't leave anything left of the man he was facing across from him in the cage. All he needed was one right hand, and that dropped Noon. And Shipman rushed over to drop the hammer fists on top of him, and Dan Miragliotta was like, no, you already knocked him silly. This fight's over.
If you want the audio version, it went like, here we go. The fight, kick his ass, and it's done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Twitter replay of the fight.
Kick his ass, Seabass.
The tweet of the fight is the fight. Like, it's so short, you can watch the whole thing in one tweet. You know, normally when there's a finish in a fight, they go to a commercial break and then they come back and they talk about the winner. This fight was so fast, they didn't. They couldn't. 10 seconds gives you no time. They had to immediately go to Michael C. Williams announcing the winner of the fight and do the post-fight interview because they couldn't cut to a commercial after the fight ended in 10 seconds. There was no way to do it.
What's the old joke with tout? You could do a tout video in the entire length of the fight?
Well, this would be one of those cases, yes.
Jeez. Moving on to the other fight here on the main card, we had
2 more fights on the main card.
2 more fights. The Kate Jackson Anastasia Vankova.
I hate to say it, but Yankova kind of got exposed here.
Yeah. 29-27, 30-26, and 30-26 for your winner, Kate Jackson. It might be a case of wrong opponent for Yankova. It might not.
Okay, well, Kate Jackson was known as a striker coming into this fight, and Yankova was known as a submission fighter coming into this fight. So the question was, Kate Jackson got tooled by Valerie Letourneau, who is obviously a superior striker. So how was she going to respond coming back from that embarrassment? And she responded by going out there in the first round and whipping Anastasia Yankova. Just kicking her butt from one side of the cage to the other and not letting up. And it was like, okay, Yankova, why aren't you trying to take this to the ground? Why aren't you offering some better defense? Why aren't you counter-striking? Why aren't you doing anything other than taking a shellacking? And that's all she did for the majority of this fight.
But I'll give her this. She didn't give up.
She didn't give up. She has a lot of heart, and that's going to get her a little further in the flyweight division, but it's not going to get her a championship fight. And Kate Jackson, on the other hand, who was not even previously in that conversation, by completely dominating a previously undefeated fighter, she's now in that conversation.
And why don't we talk about the head kick of doom to round out the main card?
Oh, yes indeed. We will talk about that because Mr. Wonderful landed a wonderful head kick. You don't see him this good that often. Now,
that lit a fight too.
Yeah, third round, 1:05. So it was a fight where you would expect Phil Davis to take Linton Vassell to the ground and work him over. And there was a little bit of that, but a lot of the time they were standing and Davis was throwing straight shots and he was reaching the target, whereas Vassell was trying to use his reach and throw these looping overhand hooks. But the problem is, because Davis was throwing the straight punch, he was the faster man to connect, even though Vassell had the reach advantage. So Davis was winning the striking battle standing up, and then he baited perfectly. He totally psyched Vassell out by just feinting a little and making Vassell lean one way, and then all of a sudden, he's leaning in to block the punch, and he doesn't see the foot coming up to smack him in the head. And it was just beautiful technique. It's something every fighter should look at and go, I want to do that. I want to psych a guy out, make him fall for it, and then land a head kick like that.
Oh, he saw it. It was just on a replay.
Yeah, he saw it later. He didn't see it when it hit him.
No. Now let's move on to the news. I teased it earlier. While this show was going on, and because of the tape delay, because it was overseas, you were getting not bits and pieces, but it was definitely on a delay. While these fights were going on, Nick Diaz was arrested, and not for a small offense or a minor charge. No, we're talking domestic battery and strangulation, and it took, Jesus, I can't believe I'm going to say this. When he was in the prison, he was arrested, he was taken to the jail. While in the jail, he was brawling with corrections officers.
Mm-hmm. What did it take, like 10 officers to subdue him?
Well, when the call came out, apparently they called 12 cop cars to get him. I don't know why you need 12.
Because it's Nick Diaz, that's why?
Just send a cop with a taser.
I think as coked out of his mind as he was, a taser was not going to stop him.
You would be surprised how many people said cocaine is a hell of a drug, or how much pot did he smoke, or a lot of people are giving him, I'm not going to say, how do I say this? A lot of people already thought he was guilty. Obviously, he's innocent until proven guilty. We all know that. It doesn't look good for him right now from a legal standpoint, first and foremost. But technically, he was able, he wasn't under suspension anymore. So technically, he's an active fighter. He doesn't have a fight right now. He's on the roster. He's not a suspended fighter. So UFC, once again, has to sit on the sidelines, let the legal process play out, and then see what they can do afterwards if there's anything to be done. With Diaz, unfortunately, these charges are very serious.
Mm-hmm.
and it causes a black eye, and I hate using that term in this regard, but it's apt because it brings the world of mixed martial arts. It paints it with a negative spotlight, so to speak, in a time where, with this new deal with Fox, or not Fox, ESPN, sorry, they're leaving Fox. The ink is still wet on that paperwork. And to have this happen,
Not a
it's
good
like,
look.
of all the times to pull this shit, now, on the other side of the coin, some people who are defending Diaz have gone and have said multiple things, which I'm not going to repeat, about the accuser. Obviously, there's always three sides to every story, side A, side B, and the truth. Somewhere in the middle. I'm going to let the process play out. Who knows what's going to happen? We don't all want to jump on the guilty bandwagon because it's not fair to Diaz. I'm not sticking up for Diaz. I'm not sticking up for the accuser. I'm just saying let the process play out. But the timing of this stinks.
Well, considering it also follows up what Conor McGregor did, I think, yeah, not great timing to give another black eye to the sport in general, considering Conor is probably going to get a slap on the wrist, even though he destroyed a bus window, cost 3 fighters a payday, well, actually 6, 3 fights, 6 fighters. I mean, right now, with Nick Diaz and Conor McGregor both causing trouble, it's not a good time for UFC.
Now, he was arrested, his bail was set, but he couldn't see a judge until Saturday, so he did spend the night in jail. Now, I was mentioning to someone that I wonder how long he's going to be in jail for. Before I could finish my sentence, they responded, yeah, he's already been released.
You knew that had happened. He's got
The
enough
bail
money
was
to get...
only set.
Yeah.
$185,000, I believe, is what the bail was. I'm not saying he's a rich man, but he hasn't had a fight in how many years? He's not rolling in dough. Like what? We're talking 6 years since his last fight?
Obviously, he
It's
got
been a
enough money
while.
fighting GSP that he's set for life. That's my answer to that.
Maybe he called his brother. Who knows?
Or that's possible too.
We're gonna get a lot more out of this, and I hate saying time will tell, but what else can we say right now? We have to wait for the court date. We've got you mentioned Conor, we've got Conor's next court date coming up in a few weeks.
Yep.
That'll be fun.
Fun is debatable.
We also have John Jones USADA hearing coming up in a few weeks. That'll be fun. Mm-hmm. Now we got Diaz. That'll be fun. Like, it's almost like, let's go to the MMA beat. We have a station, we have a reporter stationed outside the courthouse. No, I'm not joking. We're gonna go to the courthouse now. We are a fighting sport, but we're not gonna talk about it at the event. We're gonna talk about the courthouse. It's like, can you imagine if this happened in, I don't know, college football, a week after a huge deal where the NCAA just re-signed with ESPN for 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the biggest players on the number 1 ranked, we'll say Georgia Bulldogs, for example, their quarterback did something like this. What kind of perception, if you're an ESPN executive and this happens, doesn't that just leave a bitter taste in your mouth, just a little bit, saying, what did we get ourselves into? I
think everybody knows what they're getting into. ABC knew what they were getting into when they put Roseanne Barr on television. ESPN knew what they were getting into when they put UFC on an inked contract. They knew what they were getting into. Don't act like these media companies haven't done their homework and don't know the kind of people they're dealing with. They're fully aware. They have multi-million-dollar research divisions to look up every single person on anybody they're doing business with.
Okay, I'm trying to...
You're trying to drag out
okay,
the show is what you're trying to do.
no, I'm trying to think, and I don't know the answer. That's why I'm stumbling, because I had an answer, but now it doesn't make sense anymore. Is Diaz done? And I'm thinking no, but the more I'm thinking about it, yeah. Just because he's a licensed fighter, doesn't have a fight, he's an active fighter before this happened, the will to fight, I thought he might have just retired after suspension was over. But now I'm thinking, does he fight? And if so, if he does fight after this, is it in the octagon?
I wouldn't guarantee that.
I see this as I see this as a precedent-setting issue, because what happens after the legal process is done, it could go a long way for future incidents going further. Same with Connor.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's the big news item here. We could move on. I mean, there's so much more that sorry, my screen just froze. Just one second. There's a lot more that we could go into. I mean, we do have one other news item, then we'll quickly talk about this weekend's UFC show in Utica, New York, but I'm going to try my best to transition here, Stevie. Let's talk about the retirement of a surefire UFC Hall of Famer.
Yeah, first round ballot, automatic induction. I would say it, you would say it. He's had, I think, more fights than any other fighter in UFC history in the octagon. I don't think there's anybody that's had the tenure or has fought as many times or has been as much of a draw in as many fights in as many places as Michael the Count Bisping. And to put it in the words of another pro wrestling and MMA writer that we know, Michael Bisping is one of the best heels in mixed martial arts. The guy could make you hate him like nobody's business. And he was so good at being hated that I actually wound up loving him, because his larger-than-life personality, his ability to talk trash, and then 95% of the time he could back it up when he actually got in the cage and had a fight, and the only 5% of the time he didn't was facing very top guys. And one of those top guys, Luke Rockhold, he actually beat in a rematch, knocked him out, and won the middleweight title, which I'd say is the icing on the cake of a career that was already a little long in the tooth by that point, because he's had eye problems, he's had some health problems, and apparently the thing that made a difference for Bisping was he was watching a movie on an international flight, and the movie was about a fighter who made the choice to keep fighting past his prime, and his health started to deteriorate, his mental faculties started to go, he destroyed himself trying to get back that one more win. And Michael Bisping watched this film and realized, if I don't stop right now, I'm that guy. And that's when he decided, it's over, I'm not coming back.
Was the movie The Wrestler?
No, it was a different movie, and God help me, I can't think of the name of it, but it was a movie about a pro boxer.
Okay. My thoughts on Bisping, yes, absolutely. Not many fighters can say they fought both Anderson Silva and GSP.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not many fighters can say, look at his
Not
fights.
many fighters can say they beat both Anderson Silva and Luke Rockhold.
That's true. But starting it tough, that's when he got his first exposure. And going from there, there's been some very memorable sound bites from Bisping over the years. Okay, there's a lot of sound bites with Bisping over the years. Let's not kid ourselves.
Right.
But if you want a good laugh, watch him as a coach on The Ultimate Fighter.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I've laughed that hard in a long time.
That's the kind of situation that's tailor-made for his personality, because he owns a room when he's in it, because he can, for whether you love him or you hate him, he can own a room with his verbal ranting and his needling of people, whether they're the opposite team or the opposite coach or the opposite opponent, he gets under people's skins, and it is so much fun to watch.
I know it's the wrong weight class, but McGregor almost reminds me of a skinnier Bisping in the ability to trash talk, to needle you, to get you to take you off your game, so to speak. The mental fight before the fight.
Yeah, McGregor...
Bisping wrote the book, Conor borrowed it.
Right. McGregor was following in the footsteps of the legend, and we can say that he's the legend now because he's retiring from competition. So, yes, if Michael Bisping built the playbook, Conor took it and rewrote it, but he wouldn't have had that playbook without him.
No. And I do want to mention one other thing before we talk about UFC that's just hit the wire about an hour ago. Bobby Green is out of his fight at UFC 225, and we're going to talk about that show next week. It's now going to be Clay Guida against Charles Oliveira.
Oh, that's an interesting shakeup.
And the funny thing is, that's a Fight Pass fight.
Yeah, okay, well, let's not have that debate now. Next week.
We'll have that debate next week, but if you look at the Fight Pass fights and the prelims on this card, dear God, I don't remember a stacked card like that. Next week. All right, let's talk about Fight Night 131 in Utica, New York with Rivera and Moraes.
Okay, well, to be perfectly honest with you, this is another one of those cases where I say, is this event even strictly necessary? And I don't mean to demean either of the fighters in the main event here, but how many people are going out of their way on the 1st of June to stop everything they're doing and watch Jimmy Rivera versus Marlon Moraes on Fox Sports 1?
If I wasn't already booked that night, I would definitely go and watch this show. But I'm a hardcore fan.
Right. Okay. That's why I'm saying this, because as a hardcore fan, you can appreciate the number 4 and the number 5 ranked bantamweights going against each other, looking at a chance to move up and possibly either fight TJ Dillashaw or fight somebody that's ranked ahead of them to get to Dillashaw. So, it is an important fight. It's just...
Wait, these are bantamweights?
Yeah.
I just saw a recent picture of Moraes recently.
Moraes is jacked.
That much muscle?
Yeah,
holy.
Dude, I know. I've interviewed him how many times now when he was back in World Series. And yes, he is a very jacked up bantamweight. He's tough, he's strong, he's hard as hell. And this is going to be a fun fight, but I'm saying, between you and me and the fly on the wall doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah. I mean, I look at this card, we got Rivera Moraes as the main, the co-main is Gillespie and Pichel, which I know is one of your favorites.
Yeah, From Hell Pichel is a fun fighter, and Gillespie is underrated, so nothing wrong with that fight at lightweight, but
and
again,
undefeated.
It's just, who cares beyond the hardcores? I don't see anybody that cares. Walt Harris and Daniel Spitz? No, that one's... You know what fight would actually draw the casuals? Jake Ellenberger and Ben Saunders. Those are two names that people actually know. They know the Juggernaut. No, seriously. Look at the name recognition of the fighters on this card. You know who the guys are that people will know? Jake Ellenberger, Ben Saunders, Sam Alvey, and Gian Vellante. Those are the 4 fighters that people would know.
If you want excitement on the prelims, you've got Lauren Murphy, you've got Nick Lentz, you've got Bilal Muhammad. There's some named fighters on this card.
I'm not arguing with the quality of the fighters. I'm arguing this is not a must-see show.
That's why it's on a Friday.
Yeah, and like you said, people have plans on Friday. People go out. People do things.
Well, I mean, as far as the fights go, I mean, there are some decent fights here from a hardcore perspective. But, I mean, if I had to pick a winner between Moraes and Rivera, I mean, you got a 21-1 fighter against a 25-1, but you've seen Moraes at World Series. You know what he's capable of. Rivera, the last time I picked him, to lose, I was dead wrong, and he made me eat my words on that. It's a really hard pick. It's almost like a pick 'em main event. And the pick 'em main events, especially at this weight class, have the potential to be a showstopper. To be one, like, damn, I can't believe I missed that main event. That was an exciting fight.
Well, let's just say if you were disappointed with Thompson and Till, then this fight would probably be the remedy to cure that.
That's true. Who do you have in the main event?
I'll go with Moraes.
Okay. Gillespie and Pichel?
I'll go with Gillespie.
Really? I'm gonna go with Pichel on that one.
Okay.
Harris and Spitz?
Let's see.
There's some big boys. There's some big boys here, I'll tell you.
I do like Spitz coming off the TKO over Anthony Hamilton. That was an impressive win. Walt Harris is a very durable, very experienced fighter, but his track record is a little spotty, so I'm going to go with Spitz.
Okay. I'll give you that one. I'll go with Spitz as well. Saunders and Ellenberger has potential as well to be the fight of the night.
Yeah, the thing I worry about, though, is I think Ben Saunders is getting to that point where he's maybe on the tail end of his career.
Ellenberger's the same, though, in my opinion.
Yeah, they've both been around a long-ass time. I don't know. This is one where I almost feel like the loser gets a pink slip.
Ooh. These name fight, oh, well. They're run a fight night that's only for the hardcores. They're both on the, yeah. Your MMA math adds up on that one.
I hate to say it, I'm actually gonna pick the Killer Bee.
Really? Okay. I agree. I actually think Saunders is gonna win this fight, and I think Ellenberger does get cut. But it's almost the situation was if he gets cut, does he go to Bellator?
Yes.
Oof, there's some good fights there.
All right, last
Aker
two, I'll finish.
One.
Timur over Ars and Alvey over Vellante.
I'll take Timur and Alvey on that. And the prelims, check it out, FS1, Murphy, Lance, you got Bilal Muhammad, you got Desmond Green and Gleason Tebow, and on the Fight Pass prelims, Jessica Aguilar, Johnny Eduardo, and Jose Torres.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some decent fighters on this card. It's kind of scary.
It is, again, not the quality of the fighters that's in question here. It's just the name value of the fighters fighting on a Friday night in a show that honestly is not compelling in any way.
All right. Well, Stevie, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
Don't know. We'll find out on Thursday.
All right. Well, I'm sure you'll talk some Money in the Bank qualifiers, and I believe there's some more all-in news that I'm sure you'll talk about. Is there anything you want to plug this week?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, I hope everybody in the States had a good Memorial Day weekend, and that's it for the show. For Stevie J, I'm Peter H. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.